So somewhere along the line, the idea of a film began to become very appealing. And Puzzle, which started as simply an ambient jam I was going to put up on the internet, began to really evolve. A project that began as something very nondescript has become ultimately one of the biggest creative undertakings of my entire career. Is it particularly appealing music? That's hard to say. I mean, it wasn't an appealing set of circumstances that inspired it. It's dark and it has almost no form. But to me, that's what the pandemic was. So what's the theme of the film? The overarching creative question was, how do you recognize how much of your internal process is based on years of patterns that you haven't questioned, your bias, your fear, your unconscious dialogue? And then how much of your life do you become a slave to? You're a slave to your own fear, you're a slave to your own process, people pleasing. And the more I thought about it, and the more I looked around, the more this theme started to be appearing as a universal trait in a lot of the artists that I knew and had worked with. And the pandemic, on some perverse level, allowed us all to sit with it because there was no place to run. And frankly, I found myself really grateful for that in a weird way. And the theme of how one makes peace with themselves and with their own mind during a period of what could be called profound adversarial circumstances struck me as a great opportunity for personal growth, because no longer was I able to sort of put aside those thoughts and just escape on tour or something. All your insecurities are laid bare when there's no place to run. So what I began thinking is that this theme could be applied to many different forms of media, through many different eyes, through many different circumstances. So the universal theme that all the media ended up being based on was, how does one come to a conclusion? How does one make a decision? And ultimately, you are not your thoughts. So I wanted everyone who was involved to give their own spin to this sort of simple theme. So if we had a graphic novel, for example, the artist making that, in this case Mark Leary, his quote-unquote puzzle, although a completely different set of circumstances, would be ultimately the same theme. And that theme is about making a decision. So what decision is it that I'm talking about? Well, that's the whole point. It's different for everybody. For me, I chose the fear of going outside, leaving your comfort zone. He chose, should I have another cookie with my coffee? It's arbitrary. And then I got a hold of a bunch of other artists, and I got a hold of my sister, whom is a fantastic artist and a great writer, and I asked her to write a book about the same theme. So what's her puzzle? What's Mark's puzzle? What's my puzzle? What's Morgan's puzzle? What's your puzzle? The idea is that all these experiences that we've accumulated in our lifetime inform all the decisions we make at any moment. It's not just a yes or a no. It's a lifetime of pain, fear, bias that inform all these decisions. And as such, are we in control of our own lives? And I started to visualize the decisions that we make as a sort of fourth dimensional shape. Almost like each person's decision-making process is unique, like a snowflake on a visual level. And all Travis's art began to appear almost like two-dimensional continents in which each one of these parts of your intellectual process plays out. And each one of these places is inhabited by a different part of your psyche. And so when all the decisions do finally come together and they coalesce into like a yes or a no, yes, I should have another cookie. Yes, I should go outside. Whatever your answer to your own individual question is, how much of that is you versus a pattern that has been created? So the process of making any decision is the coalescence of all these parts of your mind, all these two-dimensional forms coming together into a unique sort of fourth dimensional shape. And solving the puzzle, so to speak, was about recognizing that pattern. So this led me to investigating different types of fourth dimensional shapes. And that actually led me to an artist, a visual artist named Julius from the Netherlands, who does fractal art. He was doing an installation in New York, and he's just a brilliant artist. He has this amazing repertoire of fractal imagery. So I contacted him, and he was interested enough in the concept to participate and to create a series of visualizations that were meant to represent the parts of the mind coming together into a decision, a visual representation of what it takes to make a decision, a representation of the internal process of one's mind making a decision. And I guess one of the reasons why that seemed to be such an appropriate topic to pursue during the pandemic is the amount of misinformation that we're fed constantly online puts us all in a position where we have to make up our own mind, where we have to make hard decisions for ourselves and our families after years of many of us taking for granted how difficult it is to function autonomously. So the next step was to try and figure out, how am I going to make a film?